Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is Black Tech Talk, episode 153, Renewable Energy. And I am here running the show tonight by myself. Please hit the like button as you come in. There is a docket in the description beneath the video. Please share the video as well. And I will wait 30 seconds to give people a chance to kind of come in. And then we will get started. I will share my screen as well. If you want to follow along, there's a docket in the description beneath the video. I'll give a few more seconds for people to kind of come in if they can. I know we started late because the new YouTube feature actually kind of slows things down. It gave me a bad link, so I have to start all over. All right, let me get started. Make sure I delete these old ones as well. All right, we're gonna get started. Share my screen. All right, so first article is from CleanTechnica.com. Global coal demand set to remain stable through 2023 despite 2018 increase. Despite the fact that global coal demand is expected to rise for a second year in a row in 2018, the International Energy Agency nevertheless believes that coal demand will remain somewhat net stable through 2023, due primarily to declines in Europe and North America being offset by strong growth in India and Southeast Asia. The International Energy Agency published its latest coal report, Coal 2018, early this month, revealing what many had already suspected. Global coal demand will increase in 2018. Global coal returned to growth in 2017 after 2 years of decline, growing up 1% and is now expected to grow again in 2018, due in large part to strong coal power growth and demand in China and India. Unfortunately, for those looking to restrict and constrict coal-fired power generation, the IEA believes that market trends are proven resistant to change despite the increase in attention across the globe being given to fossil fuel divestment and moves away from coal power generation. Quote, the story of coal is a tale of two worlds with climate action policies and economic forces leading to closing coal power plants in some countries. While coal continues to play a part in securing access to affordable energies in others, for many countries, particularly in South and Southeast Asia, it is looked upon to provide energy security and underpin economic development. The global coal dichotomy is highlighted strongly in the change in coal consumption between 2016 and 2017, which, according to most observations, will follow through 2018. The chart is just showing the change in coal consumption for the last 2 years, and we're seeing on the chart that there's a high demand in India and Korea, which would be North Korea for the most part, and then there's a slight demand in Russia and slight demand in China, with Indonesia and places like Colombia, United Kingdom, Ukraine, Germany, and United States have all taken major deficits in demand. So the IEA's figures can sometimes be a little too fossil fuel optimistic, and given the timing of the report, no one is around to shed any light on the IEA's methodology. However, while the IEA has been accused of failing to properly integrate the growth of renewable energy sources into their models and the attendant speed of fossil fuel decline in Western markets, its coal 2018 report is unlikely to be too, too far off the mark, if at all. The reality is that there's a lot going on in the global power mix at the moment, as it can be highlighted by the fact that even as coal demand is expected to remain relatively stable through 2023, its share of the total energy mix will nevertheless decline from 27% to 25%, according to the IEA. Global coal demand will continue to be constricted in Western markets like Europe and the United States, as policies and natural market dynamics push these regions away from the coal and towards renewable energy sources, but will be offset by strong growth in India and other Asian countries. Specifically, India's increase in coal demand is currently 3.9% per year, but is slowing as the country continues to invest in large-scale expansion of its renewable energy sector. The IEA also expects to see significant increases in coal use in Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Pakistan. So what's happening, for the most part, is that coal is cheap to actually produce for energy, but it's very dirty. And because of that, a lot of these countries are playing by these globalist standards where they want to seem like they're making a transition to new renewable energies, but coal-fired plants or coal power plants are actually relatively cheap sources of energy relative to their counterparts such as nuclear and hydroelectric. But I often wonder if it's cheaper, well, not cheaper, but if there's a possibility that you can actually capture some of these coal um, exhaust fumes or smoke, and then transfer it into something like a second source of energy, putting it through some kind of filtering system, like how you do with diesel cars, with blue liquid into the exhaust, and that's how you make clean diesel vehicles. There has to be a way that you can do that with coal power as well. All right, I'll skip the second one because the second one is actually a video, and I don't want to show any videos on here. I'll go to the third one on the item on the docket. So, all right, this one is from bworldonline.com. The economics of coal power. This is actually a relatively long article, so I won't delve too far into it. Most anti-coal activists would resort to disinformation and deception to advance their ecological leftist agenda in the process. Deprive energy consumers of the opportunity to have cheaper, stable, and reliable 24/7 electricity badly needed to sustain fast growth and generate more jobs for the people. One paper spreading fake news is an opinion piece. Consumers should not pay the price for risky coal deals by Sarah Jane Ahmed, published in Business World last week, February 20, 2019. I quote three of her statements. One, coal has become toxic in India, China, Malaysia, and most recently Vietnam. A trend of cancellations and delays involving new coal plants has emerged. Coal remains attractive not only for the four countries mentioned, but other major economies in the world, including Greenies, US, Germany, Australia, and Japan. Until 2017, these four developed countries were reliant on coal power from 31% to 61% of their total electricity generation. For India, China, Malaysia, and Vietnam, coal reliance was 45% to 76%. In the Asia Pacific overall, coal supplied 60% of the total electricity production. The real toxic energy would be candles and gensets because of frequent blackouts. Candles mean more fires and destruction of property, while gensets running on diesel means more air and noise pollution. Two, SMC Global Power Holdings Corp plans to forge ahead with construction of a 300 megawatt coal plant in Negros Occidental. Insurance and reinsurance companies will no longer insure coal. San Miguel Energy sees the power of deficiency in Negros, so its main insurance for building a coal plant is that its output would quickly used by 5 million consumers, 4.4 million in 2015, as electricity demands keep rising. The main source of electricity in Negros is geothermal from um, Palapinian, Negros Oriental by EDC. Before and even after the many solar farms were constructed in Negros, regular and rotating blackout was the norm. Luckily, there are saviors somewhere. The coal plants from Cebu, Toledo, and Naga. Negros imports energy from Cebu, which has similar population as Negros, but power generation is nearly two times that of Negros. An anti-coal ideologue opposing a new coal plant in Negros was silent about coal plants in Cebu that gives lights to Negros. So basically, what's being said here is that there's a lot of political pushback on what's going on in terms of coal development. Um, Coal power plants, as the article just pointed out, can produce up to 300 megawatts, which is relatively a lot for a small plant. That's only a quarter of a gigawatt. So there is some return on investment here. So just keep that in mind. Let me get to the next article. Extended clips, what's going on? Nate, what's going on? All right, this next one is from tvmagazineusa.com. Blockchain trading solar power system in the real world. PowerLedger's XGrid is a blockchain-based electricity trading platform that's now being used in Pennsylvania Business Park, in addition to Chicago, California, a large housing unit in Australia, plus a few more locations. The fads come and go, and the big ideas rise and fall. It is the nature of our evolution and how we're evolving. We're evolving the world around us in time with our resources, with our resource needs. And for a year or two, anything blockchain based made popular by Bitcoin was just hot, hot, hot. That is until the press releases and initial coin offerings slowed, and there still weren't projects in the ground. And this isn't blockchain's fault. It's the nature of early adopters' peak of inflated expectations. PowerLedger's XGrid is now in the United States in three separate locations with the latest deployment in the PJM interconnection grid. The project is managing electricity trading going on between 35 kilowatt rooftop and carport solar power systems, and two businesses located within the same business park. The project owner is American Power Net, an independent power supply company selling into deregulated markets. Very specifically, PowerLedger provides a piece of software and hardware that tracks electricity generation at this solar power project. Much like the utility grade electricity meter, then tracks that same electricity as it moves into the local distribution system, and finally tracks electricity usage at multiple customers who have connected their systems together digitally. The system also tracks the creation of renewable energy credits and helps manage the transfer of them from the solar power plant to the buyers of the electricity. American PowerNet deployed the system in deregulated market with the cooperation of the local utility PPL Electric, utilizing their utilizing their distribution system and pre-existing meters. No additional utility hardware, software, or engineering fees were required for electricity trading. PowerLedger has more projects participating with several in Australia, including an 80 home project that is trading electricity uh, allotments from an on-site solar power project among themselves. SMA recently announced that they give a single solar coin (SLR) to customers for every megawatt per hour of solar electricity generated. They rolled out they they rolled this out to more than 260,000 of their existing customers. The coin itself isn't the thing of value, but instead it is the renewable energy certificate within this marketplace where the coin created that matters. So basically, what's happening is they created these micro power grids where they generate electricity from the sun into the solar panel, and the solar panel connects to a piece of software and hardware that distributes the power out, and whoever's on the receiving end of it um, unlocks that power, and then for every megawatt per hour that they generate, they also get a token out of it, and that token becomes valuable and tradable um, as they generate power. Mind out what's going on, brother.
All right. Hey, what's going on? How you doing today?
I'm chilling, brother. So,
I'm all right. A little taxed. Um, yeah. Power Ledger was all the rage back in late 2017 when the crypto market went up. That's not to say that they are not doing anything or they're not anything to invest in. What they are offering is tremendous. What you just read, when people generate electricity, power, they can sell it back to the grid in either one of these connected grids that Power Ledger is Power Ledger has right now there in Australia, which means people putting solar panels on top of their homes, on their land, and with this, you can live if you are a generator of power. Not only can you live without paying an electrical bill, but you can also receive income through this.
Mhm.
I like it. We went over many articles in the past of how people are doing this, how people are selling electricity back to the grid, and this is just one such instance. And just this one, a crypto company is spearheading the project.
Mhm. Right, and these are actual possibilities of creating your own utility companies for the most part. There's a whole lot that can come out of this, but this is the level one aspect of, if you will, of where a utility company would start from. You would only need something like the size of a mall or a football field, for that matter, to really set up your own utility company using solar panels and other means of renewable energy. So that's why this ended up on the docket. So.
Right. And this shows what blockchain and crypto can do for people. It can help people gain an income.
Mhm.
You are tokenizing energy. Your ability to produce energy. That's great. That's a great idea.
Yep. Now I don't know how well it'll work in the United States. I know a lot of states, have a monopoly on utility, but when you start going into places like Latin America or even Puerto Rico, for that matter, when the hurricane hit Puerto Rico, they were, it was a disaster. They did not have the capability to get their hydroelectric plants back up and going in a matter of time. This solves a lot of their problems. So having these small sort of um, short run micro grids actually is a lot more beneficial, because you can power up um, many small homes. When we talk about homes, we think about American homes where you have these big Victorian brownstones, but in other countries they don't have that. They have bungalows and things of that nature that are very minor. You're talking about one story. Um, it may have three or four lights in the house. Um, refrigerator and a few outlets, and that's about it. They might have one TV, and that's it. So one home may not even use up 100 watts at best. You're lucky to use 100 watts.
Right. And man, that's a way for these quote unquote third world countries, people that live in this third world country. Imagine the people of Venezuela having something like this. The hyperinflation wouldn't hit as hard. They'll have at least something to fall back on to ease those times when they need milk, eggs, butter, flour. They can use the money they're getting from this to buy those very basic staples. You hear stories of people needing medicine. It, you can. This will allow you to survive an extra day or two. You know, these are micro payments in your pocket. So this is a good one.
All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from the LATimes.com. California's San Bernardino County slams the brakes on big solar projects. California's largest county has banned the construction of large solar and wind farms on more than 1 million acres of private land, bending to the will of residents who say they don't want renewable energy projects industrializing their rural desert communities northeast of Los Angeles. Thursday's 4-1 vote by San Bernardino County's Board of Supervisors highlighted a challenge California could face as it seeks to eliminate the burning of plant warming fossil fuels. State lawmakers passed a bill last year requiring utility companies to get 60% of their electricity from renewable sources by 2030 and 100% from climate-friendly sources by 2045. But achieving those goals will require cooperation from local governments, and big solar and wind farms, like many infrastructure projects, are often unpopular at the local level. Representative of national solar developers, including First Solar and Clearway Energy, urge the supervisors to consider the economic benefits of solar projects, including jobs and tax revenue. They were joined by union members who told the supervisors that the solar farms create hundreds of high paying construction jobs. Quote, they are comparing construction jobs, but that's what we make our livelihood off of. And to put language in there that strictly prohibits these projects from going forward could be irresponsible, said Justin Lanford, president of San Bernardino County chapter of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Dozens of local residents spoke in support of the proposed ban known as Renewable Energy Policy 4.10. They came from high desert communities such as Daggett, Joshua Tree, and Lucerne Valley, where existing solar projects are seen by many as eyesores that destroy desert ecosystems and fuel large dust storms. I don't, interesting statement. Sarah Fairchild, a resident of Pioneer Town, said she's been working with a group trying to get California Highway 247, which runs from Yucca Valley to Barstow, designated as a state scenic highway. Supporters say that designation would draw tourists and boost local economies. But Fairchild is worried that several solar projects proposed along or near the highway would ruin the pristine desert landscapes that make the area so attractive. Quote, these vast open areas are precious for their natural, historical, and recreational qualities, but they are fragile, and no amount of mitigation can counter the damage that industrial scale renewable energy projects would cause, Fairchild told supervisors. Once destroyed, these landscapes can never be brought back. I don't want to read this whole entire article because it's kind of, I think we get the point that there are people who are fighting against renewable energies and then turn right back around um, and say, well, we need more clean energy. Well, where are you going to get the clean energy from? If you can't put it inside the desert where nobody's there, and you're telling me that there has to be preservation of this land because uh, of dust storms. Well, you just had a wildfire in California that damn near took out a good portion of your state and had smog everywhere from the fires. And you don't seem to have too much of a problem with that, but you have a problem with solar panels being in the desert. You know.
Yeah, I agree. This is ridiculous. It's like they want something, but they don't want it.
Hmm.
And it sound when I saw the article, I said to myself, that doesn't make sense. And no one's there. Okay, I can understand their argument more if it's in their backyard where they can clearly see these big wind farms. Then in that case, I would say, okay, make it so where it blends in with the landscape. But it's in the desert. It's no one is there. It's like that trip going from LA to Nevada. You go through desert. No one is there. You may as well put renewable energy there. It provides jobs. It cuts down. And California is a liberal state, which means a lot of their laws and people that live there geared toward flower power. that type of things. And I'm surprised that people are. That's not to say everyone that lived there is pro flower power. That type of description. But yes, people that live there do not want these things, like fossil fuels. But per this article, to stay on track, it provides jobs, provides renewable clean energy. Um, there'll be these things that provide these clean renewable energy. We put it in a place where it's desolate, it's dirt, it's a desert, no one is there, but it might as well utilize the space. So what's the problem? They're talking about dust storms. Well, that can be fixed with design. You
But
know,
that, but the dust storm argument is so stupid because you're gonna have dust storms regardless if there's solar panels there or not. You can't tell me that putting solar panels inside the desert causes dust storms. There's no scientific evidence to prove that. It's another not in my backyard sort of argument. We had the same problem out here in Massachusetts with wind turbines in Cape Cod, and the people in Cape Cod said, "Well, we don't want that, in our backyard. It's ugly because the wind turbines were ugly." That was their argument. There was no scientific evidence provided that somehow this is going to hurt wildlife or somehow this is going to bring not radiation, but harmful health effects to the residents of the area. The wind farms were actually in the water. They weren't on the land. They were in the water, and these people were saying, "Well, it's ugly. It's ugly from a scenic standpoint, and we don't want that in our backyard." I thought that was ridiculous. It's these Luddites, these renewable energy Luddites. They want cheap electricity, but they just don't want to actually see the infrastructure being put in. But where do you think you're going to get the energy from?
it's going to magically appear. They
Hmm.
want it, so they're voila, you got it. They don't. It's like they're separated from what it takes to get what you're asking for. It takes construction. It takes infrastructure. It takes you actually putting the sources together to build these things in order to create the renewable energy, the things that you very want. But you're railing against all of that. You're
Hmm.
railing against the infrastructure. Oh, I don't like that. Well, you
Hmm.
want renewable energy, right? Yes. This is what it takes. It's okay. These are the people you can't reason with because they're so contradictory in their thought and speech that
Hmm.
you can't speak to them. They want something, but they don't want it,
You got
and
to yeah. Go ahead.
and it doesn't dawn on them that they're contradicting themselves. It's weird.
No, it dawns on them that they're contradicting themselves. The problem is that they're a red herring, basically in existence. Um, as it stands, you kind of just got to wait for them to either die off or get sick or something like that in order for them to not be destructive and cause more issues. Um, because a lot of the progress is being halted by these people, but a lot of these people are old people too. They're very very old. If in my experience, they tend to be very old. They tend to be boomers. Well, they pay for their homes and they don't want this there, they don't want that there. Um, so they hold up a lot of progress, and I think it's the millennials who are really pushing these sort of initiatives because that's really where a lot of the brain power is coming from. It's coming from the millennials and the Generation Xers, but the baby boomers who got their houses at sweet deals don't want to compromise on their living by inviting or accepting that renewable infrastructure is going to be put in place.
I'll have to agree with you on that one.
Hmm.
It does seem that way.
Yeah, Nicole Ali in the chat says they are also trying to influence the millennials coming up by saving progression, saying by saying progression is bad or too expensive. Yeah, it's that sort of mindset where you need to think like me and do as I say and not as I do, sort of mentality. And it's really hurting a lot of these places because when you go to places like China, in the Gobi Desert, I mean, we covered this on some hangouts ago, back in January, but they have massive level of renewable energy infrastructure in place that makes the United States look like a third world country.
And I even saw videos where they're terraforming parts of the Gobi Desert. But you're right; they have renewable energy resources all throughout the Gobi Desert because no one is there. The
Hmm.
Gobi Desert is so big; there's no one there. You'll die trying to cross the Gobi Desert if you don't know what you're doing. There's
Hmm.
no one there. It's a bunch of vultures.
Hmm.
So you may as well utilize the space. It's
But see, the difference here between China and Dubai and the rest of these places is that the United States, um, in China, it's government run, right? So when the government says they're going to do something, they're going to go ahead and go do it. They don't care about opposition. Whereas in the United States, you have these renewable energy Luddites who are walking around saying, "Oh, well, not in my backyard. That thing looks ugly. Who wants that solar panel there? It causes dust storms. What about the birds flying into the wind turbine propellers?" And it's like, really? Let's put this to the acid test and let's actually evaluate that first. If that's going to be your claim, you need to go out and pay for the research. They had not to get off topic, but they had a study in New Hampshire. And they paid like $1 million for a study as to um why do trees keep falling on the power lines in New Hampshire in the wintertime? Well, that's easy because the trees get ice on them in the wintertime and snow. They get heavy because they're old and decrepit. They tend to fall, and they are situated next to the power lines. They tend to fall right over on top of the power line and then snap the cable. You don't need $1 million of research to figure this out.
Yeah. When I was living in New Hampshire, I was living in Dover, New Hampshire.
Oh man, that's
Uh,
the worst.
Man, when my submarine was in the shipyard, I was in Dover, New Hampshire, and I
Hmm.
went through that many times. And but you're right. When you driving down the road, you can see the power lines are go right through the trees, and even though it looks beautiful, the ice storms, one's ice on the trees, it does look nice. But those branches do fall, and tree branches are heavy. If you don't know, and they will snap them power lines.
Hmm.
And the second thing, I don't think birds are that stupid to fly directly into. If 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 pigeons run away the moment you step toward them, what makes you think they're gonna run right into a blade?
Well, it could be their natural migration path where the turbines are set up, but that's no different than saying, well, what happens if a volcano explodes and all of the wildlife on the ground are trapped? What are we gonna do now? Shift the volcanoes now? No, come on, man, this is stupid. Hey, Nicole Ali, you're welcome. She says, Mike and Lionel, thank you for your stream. Definitely, you're welcome.
You're
So,
welcome, welcome.
mhm. Yeah. So the next article is from ScienceNewsForStudents.org. How to turn a greenhouse into a powerhouse. Clear solar cells in greenhouse roofs could generate electricity while plants grow below. It's a picture of the actual design. I won't read this whole thing. I'll just read a few paragraphs. Solar cells are devices that turn sunlight into electricity. This technology offers a more earth-friendly way to produce power than burning coal or other fossil fuels. But panels of solar cells need a lot of open, sunny space to harvest that sunlight. Where space is limited, people might have to choose between solar panels and fields to grow food. But what if you could produce crops and electricity at the same time? For Yang Yang, the solution is clear. Clear solar cells, that is. Yang is a physicist at the University of California, Los Angeles. He studies solar cells, also known as photovoltaic cells. Many are made using the element silicon. Yang instead works with carbon-based versions. These solar cells are known as OPVs, or a short organic photovoltaics. OPVs are flexible and simple to make. Recently, several groups of scientists made OPVs that are transparent or clear because they let light pass through. Light pass through. One of Yang's students suggested that they use OPVs on a greenhouse roof. This inspired Yang's team to create and test a solar cell that could, excuse me, that could both make electricity and let enough light pass through to grow plants. Sunlight is made up of many colors or wavelengths of light. These colors we see from violet through red are called visible light. Their wavelengths range from 400 to 700 nanometers. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter. Yang solar cells let visible light pass through, which makes them look clear. But solar cells must also absorb sunlight to generate electricity. Yangs absorb Yangs absorb infrared light, which has wavelengths between 700 nanometers and 1 millimeter. About half of the light that comes from the sun is infrared. People can't see it, but some animals, such as snakes and bats, can sense infrared. Interesting. Plants don't need it. Plants don't need infrared light. In fact, they need only a very small range of visible light to grow. Most plants absorb red and blue light, but reflect green light. That's why most plants look green. No shit. Yang's team wanted to see whether the visible light that passes through the clear solar cells would be enough for plants to grow. His team didn't have enough materials to build a whole greenhouse, so they did experiments on small scale instead. First, they put dirt into beakers and implanted mung beans in them. They grew the beans in natural sunlight under three conditions. One group of beakers was uncovered. One group had aluminum foil on the sides and a clear OPV on top. Beakers in the final group were fully covered with aluminum foil to block all light. After 13 days, the scientists looked at how well the seeds had sprouted. In the foil-covered beakers, plants grew poorly, but seeds with a clear solar cell on top grew about as well as seeds in uncovered beakers. This means that solar cells might work on on a roof of a greenhouse. The team published its findings online January 3rd in ACS Nano. So I don't want to read this whole article because it's really good, but if you get a chance to read it, people who listen in the chat, it's actually something worth reading. Um, I remember this discussion was being had before about utilizing transparent solar photovoltaic panels for windows on commercial real estate. So what they were thinking was replacing all the glass with the see-through solar panels and having 80, 50, 60 stories of photovoltaic energy producing.
You still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you were finished or not.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is great because the light waves that these plants do not absorb means you can catch those light waves, like the article said, with these clear solar panels and absorb them to make solar energy, to make energy. I forgot the name of the it's a I won't say a chart. I can't remember the think of where I'm trying to say, but it measures the I'm at lost words, but it measures how successful civilization is by saying are they able to harness all the energy from their sun.
Hmm.
So with this, we're starting to harness more and more energy the sun produces, sends to Earth. Um, you could also put not only on the buildings, but with the first article that we went over with the power ledger, you can take the windows out that's not doing anything in your homes and install these with solar panels on the roof and also make money like that. This is great.
Yeah, there's actually a company that made an attempt to have that for shutters on your windows. So basically, the shutters on your windows when you pull them in would actually be solar photovoltaic arrays.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, and then it connects into your grid.
So when the power goes out, the power don't go out at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? You still producing power because you have your home is producing power.
Right, and when you go
Wow.
when you leave for work, I mean it just basically flips right in, right? So the shutters just actually flip in, and then when you come home, you just you open them back up, but you're collecting energy when you don't have a viable roof situation in place. So
Uh,
Paul Bryant, what's going on?
what's going on, Paul Brian? How you doing today?
Hey fellas, what's going on?
Chill, man,
Good.
chill.
Let me say this one more thing before you jump in, because I know you got something big to say. Imagine this catches on and millions of people use this. We're gonna look back and say, wow, we were living very primitive back then. When the power goes out, we were just SOL. It's like with GPS.
Hmm.
Thinking back prior to GPS, you were thinking like, wow, how did I survive without this? So it puts things into perspective. Is what I'm trying to say.
Hmm. Want to jump in there, Paul?
Um, well, I excuse me. You know, I'm a huge adherent of technology, huge adherent of future technology. So the some of the biggest downfalls, some of the biggest problems with photovoltaic cells are the inductance and the capacitance. So when I say inductance, the efficiency of the cells to transform sunlight into electricity. When I say the capacitance, I mean the storage ability. So that's where graphene comes in. Okay, if graphene can be incorporated either into traditional solar panels or with these transparent panels, if you have them wired into graphene superconductors, because graphene is superconductive and supercapacitance at room temperature. So you have a supercapacitor and a superconductor all in one. So with these panels, but basically, if you could combine those panels with graphene superconductors,
Hmm.
you would have literally no exaggeration, 50 to 70% more efficiency of your energy collection, and then 100% of your energy that's stored remains stored. So that means when it rains or when the sun goes down, you're not worried that how much power can you use? How much power are you going to have if God forbid, you wake up and it's raining in the morning? You literally don't have to worry about having to keep your home or your high-rise structure or research structure still wired into the grid. So that's why I'm excited when I see something like this. And there's also an article that I've been meaning to send you. Um, it's still in the research stage, but something that's we first saw in Star Trek,
Hmm.
so-called transparent aluminum. Apparently, scientists are claiming that they've created it. So something that's completely transparent but has the strength of metal and has all the ductile properties and strengths of metal. So listen, man, I love technology. It's the future and it's changing the world as we speak.
Hmm. All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this next one is from cleantechnica.com. Belgian scientists announce new solar panel that makes hydrogen. According to Belgian news source VRT News, scientists at KU Leuven, located in Flanders, Belgium, say they have created a solar panel that uses sunlight to make hydrogen from moisture in the air. It can produce up to 250 liters of hydrogen gas a day. Professor Johan Martins and his team have been working on this for a decade. At first, the amount of hydrogen produced was minuscule, but a, in a recent demonstration on a cloudy day, observers could see large quantities of hydrogen bubbles appear almost as soon as the demonstration panel was rolled into the sunlight. Interesting. Quote, it's actually a unique combination of physics and chemistry, Martin says. It's the beginning we had 0.1% yield, and we really had to search for those hydrogen molecules. Today, you see them coming up in bubbles, so that 10 years of work, always improving, looking for problems. And looking for problems, so you end up with something that can work effectively. Researcher Yang Ronang adds, over a year, over an entire year, the panel produces an average of 250 liters per day, which is a world's record. 20 of these panels produce enough heat and electricity to get through winter in a very well insulated house and still have electricity left over. The panels are still a long way from commercial production, but a new prototype will soon be installed at the nearby home of Lean Peters, an engineer who has turned her home into a living lab where she tests and evaluates energy conservation technologies. Her well-insulated house has solar panels that power a solar water heater and a heat pump. It is not connected to the local natural gas supply. Only in the winter months does she use electricity from the grid. Interesting. If the prototype panels work as well on her house as they do in the lab, more of them will be ground mounted in her neighborhood in the hydrogen produced used to help heat the homes of Peter's 39 neighbors. Any excess hydrogen can be stored and used the following winter. That's very interesting. Hydrogen is highly combustible, which can make it dangerous, especially if there is a leak inside of a closed space. With hydrogen gas, the risk of accidents are no greater than with natural gas. People who live north of Boston, where multiple explosions leveled dozens of homes last year, may find that statement less than reassuring. I remember that. A typical home would need about 4 cubic meters of storage, the size of a typical fuel oil tank. He says. This is really Interesting technology. What do you think about this, Paul Bryant?
Yeah, I like it. I do. I like it. I like it. I I want to see the development of it to see exactly where they go with it. But
Hmm.
you know, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how they develop it because it's interesting. My biggest concern is the oil and gas industry. They are they're the largest, most powerful companies in the world. They control all of the research, all the R&D into alternative sources of energy because by controlling the very thing which could put them out of business overnight, they've been slowing down and suppressing that until they can find something that they can monetize. They're going to suppress as much as possible. So I like seeing things like this, and then seeing where is the upside of it. That
Hmm.
you know, hope hopefully I'm looking for either one of a few things. Either we're going to see a breakthrough that they can't suppress, or we're going to get something that they're going to allow that they can monetize.
Hmm.
Because that's why we don't have broadcast energy transmission now. How do you monetize that? You can't. So they suppress it.
I know.
Now, um, it said it is um, explosive. The hydrogen this catch. Hey, I like it. They are able to collect this hydrogen, but the explosiveness of it, that is a worry to me.
It's combustible, but it's no
Well,
different than gas.
combustible.
It's no different than gas or propane being in your house. Those things are
So
highly
it's
combustible as well. So, but this is actually free energy.
okay. Now that you put it in that context, I understand.
Hmm.
Okay, all right.
Here's another article that people should be people in the chat. You should actually read on your spare time. This is actually really good stuff.
I think when they say it's highly combustible, it means ha- it's not so much that it has a lower flash point, but when it burns, it burns hotter. Okay, that's why kerosene is used for jet fuel. Kerosene is just um, jet fuel is refined kerosene with two or three chemicals for lubrication added to it, but it it doesn't have it does not have a lower flash point than gasoline, but when it burns hotter. It releases more BTUs.
Hmm.
So when you say more combustible, it just burns hotter.
Hmm. But with such a small device, where they talk about 4 cubic square meters or something like that, that it's not a whole lot relative to what um, the property is going to be, right? If I remember correctly, it's not. It's only like the size of a window pane or something like that.
Right, right, because yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Plus, it's on the outside. It's not on the inside.
True, but
Mhm.
people. Well, we'll see what happens.
Right.
That's all I'll
You,
say.
you, mhm. Yeah, you just put a sign on the outside of it that says highly flammable or a chung, for hot in Japanese or something like that.
October is German.
Oh, or whatever. All right, next one is from Quartz.com. How two Eritrean brothers built a solar power business in some of Africa's riskiest markets. Some really good stuff right here. With an hour of landing in Nairobi, Kenya in July 2016, um, Mikhail Zarai received word from that a fresh round of fighting had broken out in Juba, South Sudan. We were freaking out. We just had $2.2 million worth of solar panels equipment delivered. He says that was our that was our whole company, and Juba was being looted. At the booming East African solar market brings in significant foreign competition. Aptech Africa, a startup founded by two Eritrean brothers, is holding its own against better financed firms in some of the continent's riskiest markets. Um, Gurme Abraham and Mekal Zarai founded Aptech in South Sudan in 2011 with $5,000 of their savings and $15,000 from family in the diaspora. Quote, this now makes us very proud, says Mekal. Other businesses had bank and credit support, but we never had that. The company recently named one of the companies to inspire Africa in 2019 by London Stock Exchange Group. Now operates in 7 countries across the continent and employs around 50 people full time. Mekko and Gurme seem far away from the London Stock Exchange when they started selling solar lanterns and small scale solar kits in Juba in May 2012. For the first 6 months, Mecco operated the storefront while Gourmet traveled weekly by bus between Kampala and Juba, a 24-hour journey, bringing stock into South Sudan. Are you kidding me? What the f happened? After a grueling but profitable 6 months, they got their first contract with a major NGO installing solar panels at a medical facility. As the company grew, they began competing against global firms. At that time, we were really advancing. It was exciting. Anything seemed possible, remembers Metcalf. Everything changed in December 2013 when civil war broke out. Juba was a boom town for several years, says Dave Mazurki, one of the co-founders of Energy Peace Partners. But the war started, and in addition to the insecurity of the conflict, the economy tanked and many firms pulled out. Aptech, however, stayed and soon began receiving tenders for the half-finished projects left by companies which had fled. One of the contractors they worked with during that time, who could not be identified due to contractual constraints, said they were impressed by Aptech's persistence and the ability to negotiate access on the ground. It was very common service providers fleeing or not being able to negotiate, they say. After Aptech's equipment survived the looting in Juba in 2016, they began installing the panels despite the bullets whizzing around them. The project, installing solar energy systems at 5 teaching training colleges around South Sudan, was completed on schedule and was still functioning when the contractor left in October 2018. Quote, it was a very successful program, they say, one of the few successful ones in 2016. Being one of the only firms still operating in South Sudan was profitable, but it also came with risk. At the onset of the Civil War in 2013, Aptech lost around $160,000 worth of stock when the government forces and rebels captured and looted Bor. Aptech had been Aptech had been registered in Uganda since 2012, and as they began keeping more stock in Kampala as a security precaution, they decided to expand. They decided to expand into the competitive Ugandan market. Quote, there has been a boom in solar over the last 5 years, says Joyce. Let me pronounce that last name. CEO of Uganda Solar Energy Association. At least 500,000 Ugandan households are now connected to solar. The bulk of the connections come from pay-as-you-go home kits, where customers pay around $10 up front for a small solar panel, a few light bulbs, and a port to charge cell phones. They pay installments of around $10 until they pay off the system, which usually costs between $100 and $200. This model is largely dominated by foreign firms or foreign capital. If you're doing pay pay go, you're essentially giving out a loan. It takes it takes some time to collect on that loan. So how do you survive when you're waiting to collect? You have to have somebody financing that, so it's difficult for local firms to compete. Companies such as AppTech have to innovate. While international firms don't dominate pay as you go, local companies are offering new solar solutions for water pumping, irrigation, refrigeration, cooking, and even maize milling, says Stella Nasali, who works who works with U.S. government backed Power Africa Uganda Electricity Supply Accelerator. AppTech AppTech are currently piloting a pay-as-you-go solar water pump in collaboration with a local firm in Uganda. Instead of paying $1,700 up front, they offer a system where customers pay off the solar pump over 1 year with monthly installments of around $140. While AppTech finds its niche in stable markets, the brothers are building on their expertise or their experience in South Sudan to expand into other riskier environments such as Central African Republic and Democratic Republic of Congo. Financing means Financing remains an issue for AppTech. The brothers express frustration that while they have 100% completion rate, firms with connections to foreign capital get the bids. There are companies here that are getting $5 million, $10 million, says frustrated Metco. They prepare a nice proposal with a good photo, but they are not delivering because they don't know the situation in the field. Despite the challenges, Gourmet and Metco are optimistic about the future. The plan is to be operating in 13 countries by 2025. When asked about working back in Eritrea, both brothers are effusive. Oh, yes, that's a dream. I just want to read this statement one more time. There are companies here that are getting $5 million, $10 million, says the frustrated Metco. They prepare a nice proposal with a good photo, but they are not delivering because they don't know the situation in the field. Um, Paul Bright, you and I and Lionel have talked about this offline. Um, the value in being on the ground, knowing the situation, and coming with enough bread, enough stacks. So you want to speak? You have any opinions on this?
Absolutely. This is something that I have lived, and I have fought wars that I have stories I have even still yet to tell. But this is why in my businesses I have partners, because I like to mitigate risk. I have partners because there are tremendous, absolutely almost insurmountable roadblocks that are thrown in front of you. So rather than complain, I learned from someone a long time ago: gather your thoughts, gather your resources, get business partners, mitigate your risk, fund yourselves, and move forward. Okay? That's how I operate. That's what I did. That's what I learned. That's what I continue to do. And that's specifically what I want to speak to with these young men here. Because especially if whoever you are, if you want to do business in a foreign land, whether it's a foreign state within America or in a foreign land in another country, if you do not know the lay of the land, you will get nowhere and you will do nothing. You have to have contacts on the ground so you can hit the ground running. Individuals that you're going to do business with, who will be your point man or point men on the ground. Then, You have to understand the way that business works and the way that the real world works. Whatever funds that you've set aside or you have earmarked that you think the business will take to operate, literally triple that. Triple it, put it aside. If you have to generate other streams of income, do so. You're going to have to grease palms at multiple levels, especially when you're dealing with another country. You don't know what you're dealing with, which is why you have your point man. And just the fact that you're coming from another country, whatever palms you would be greasing here, increase that amount when you're dealing overseas, because the people there are thinking, well, oh, you know what, I'm going to get over because he doesn't know, or you know what, he must have money because he's bringing his money across the seas to do business here. Okay, so you have to grease palms. You absolutely have to. And it's all well and good to say that um, um, we need to we we need to have X amount of black men get some money together and go over there and just do a power move. It doesn't work that way, and it will never work that way. That sounds good. It's an absolutely romantic notion. Business does not work that way. All right.
Mhm. And these guys are from Africa, in born in Africa on the continent and having this sort of challenges. But they're making do with what they have.
Right.
But it's important that people understand how difficult it is to actually do business abroad. A lot of people always, like you just said, they think that you can just walk in there and conquer. We're just going to take land and we're going to, you know, create our own mini cities. And no, it's not. It's not how this works. They got boats whizzing by them while they're putting solar panels in. Think long and hard about that before you go over there. I know. You have anything you want to add to this?
I think Paul Bryant spoke for me on his because he has more experience. I don't think nothing I can say can top what he said. He said it. He put it succinctly.
Yeah, I wish we could meet brothers like this, man, and actually become business partners with people like this, because that's really what's holding them back, right? They don't have all the capital. They lost $160,000. Paul, I talk with you about this offline. That I know people who I've spoken to recently who have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in Africa for trying to do business over there. That's the nature of the game. And can you afford to lose $100,000 or $200,000? You got some guys who don't want to put no money in the super chat, let alone lose $100,000 to $200,000. This is not a game. This is serious business. And when the reason why we have these sort of hangouts is so that we put emphasis behind the seriousness in doing business abroad and domestically. But more importantly, if you're talking about going to the continent, everybody wants to go and build up Africa, but don't have the quite understanding of the tangibles and intricate details that go into actually doing multinational business, intercontinental business, and things of that nature. These brothers in this article were fortunate; they came in at the right time, and competition ended up vacating, and they capitalized on those opportunities, and almost cost them their lives, but they came out very prosperous for the
Oh,
most part.
okay. You know what? Check this out. Uh, there was a very popular and common thought. Okay, all we have to do is get X amount of brothers together and get some money and go over there and just do a power move. Let's examine that. Let's say your power move is you want to go somewhere and you want to quote unquote build a school for young Africans. Great. Number one, which country are you going to? There's 54 sovereign nations in Africa. Let's start there. Which nation? Now, you pick the nation that you want to go to. Where within that nation are you going to build this school? Okay. Now, how do you plan to build this school with people who literally may not have the skills necessary? Now, how are you going to get the equipment? How are you going to get excavators, bulldozers, front end loaders, cranes, generators to a site? Where is the site? How are you going to source your logistics? You're going to need fuel. You're going to need maintenance. You're going to need people to operate the equipment. How are
Right.
you going to source and get the logistics for the actual building materials? But before you start all of that, who are the people whose palms you have to grease? Because if you think they're just going to walk up to you with their hand out, that may happen, but all those people are going to do is they're going to take your money and disappear. Whereas the people whose palms you need to grease to get things moving, you don't even know who those people are. But you want to make a power move. So now, after you surmount all of those hurdles, now where are you going to get your three most important building staples around the world for construction? Steel, concrete, and glass. Your logistics, how and where are you going to procure your glass and get it to your site? Much less your steel, much less your concrete. Okay? And now we're talking about the field aspect. We haven't even touched upon the business aspect. Oh, well, we're just going to do it. No, it doesn't work that way. There is so much planning from soup to nuts on both sides of the business, the field side and the office side. So, I'm not saying that these things cannot happen, but it is an absolutely romantic notion to think that you're just going to walk over there, even if you have a boatload of cash and just make things happen. All right, these brothers specifically stated, if you do not know the lay of the land, you do not know the ins and outs, you know what you're going to end up getting nowhere. And then you may you may grease palms, you may have appointment on the ground. You may have all of your logistics done from front end to the back end. Great. Your
Mhm.
first day comes. You're digging. You're shooting lines and elevations. You're going to begin to start the demo and excavation for your new school. You coming to work the very next day. You get a phone call at your wherever it is that you're staying. All of the keys for your equipment are gone, or all of the hydraulic lines have either been cut, or the generators have all been stolen, or some of the equipment has been stolen. Now, what do you do?
Mhm.
It's bro, it just boggles the mind, the total lack of planning that people in this country seem to have.
Mhm.
The romantic notion that you're just going to go over there and do it. No, it
Mhm.
doesn't work that way. You have to plan.
Yep. All right.
I'm sorry,
So next,
rant over.
there's no problem. All right. So next one is from TRT World. Kenyan refugee project turns human waste into energy. Well, hopefully we don't get flagged for this one. But basically, what's happening here is it's an organization has taken human waste and have turned it into well, not renewable energy, but instead of using charcoal for fire, that they're going to produce for electricity, for cooking, they're actually utilizing human waste and transforming it with another substance. It's it gives twice the amount of energy for the same cost of a piece of charcoal. So it gives you something to think about what Africans are actually doing. A lot of people laugh when I say that Africans are at least 10 years ahead of you. You look at what's happening on video right now in these little shanty towns and these refugee camps, but there's people actually thinking on their toes.
I remember a while ago I saw, I don't know if it was on here or per my own research, where two African young ladies powered a generator through urine. And this is similar to that. Like you said, they're thinking on their feet and they're using what they need and have to generate results.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was in Ghana, I think. Well, actually, it was in Nigeria. I know what you're talking about. It was in Nigeria. But the point of the matter is that this is what they're doing. They created these toilets with these recyclable bags, and they pick up these recyclable the recyclable bags with the waste in it, take it to a plant, a very a very rudimentary plant, and basically turn these human waste into renewable energy that's very cheap. I don't. I think in the United States, like a piece of charcoal is probably like a penny or something like that in the bag, or like 5 cents in the bag. But the point of the matter is that they're getting twice the amount of energy out of that piece of recycled human waste that they would from a piece of charcoal. That's very innovative. So I tip my hat to them. Paul Bryant, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, brother, it is self-explanatory. I have nothing to add other than say I'm impressed.
Yes. Let me get to the next one. All right, this one is from WKBW. It's a news website. Renewable energy jobs, wind turbine technicians. Wind technology is creating many jobs in the U.S., and here in Buffalo, the U.S. Department of Labor estimates jobs in wind energy will see a 96% increase in the next decade. Quote, at one time, we were the most prosperous area in the world, and we will be again. Keen Sims, scientist and CEO of Keen Wind Turbines. For 5 years, Keen has been crafting a new wind turbine. Keen's turbine, called the Newtonian turbine, named after historic scientist Isaac Newton, is smaller, converts more energy, and has 8 blades compared to a normal 3 blade turbine. Interesting. Quote, we extract 100 times more of the energy available in the wind than the existing technology. Keen added, energy is the secret to great prosperity because energy is so important to all of our operations. The new turbine will have its final test this summer and will start manufacturing the turbines after final approval. Keen hopes to add 30 to 35 30 to 35 office jobs and 30 to 35 manufacturing jobs in Amherst for people to start building his new invention. Quote, it's a field that just cannot lose. There's no possible way around it. Dr. Philip Hoffmeyer, Associate Professor of Renewable Energy at SUNY, Syracuse University, New York. We have a finite resource. We have a finite resources, and so going down the fields of solar, wind, and bioenergy all are guaranteed jobs. Dr. Hoffmeyer teaches wind technology from the design to the software to the maintenance of these massive turbines. He says students have many options when choosing a career path in the wind technology. Teaching people to understand Teaching people to understand wing as a should be wind. I think that's misspelled. Wind as a resource. Then pair wind turbine technology with that. Dr. Hoffman said. Wind energy jobs are separated into 4 categories: manufacturing, project development, operation, and maintenance. Wind energy jobs, 96% growth in the next 10 years, $40,000 plus starting salary. Education, technical school. Job titles: wind turbine technicians, machinists, computer operators, quality control inspectors, managers, environmental engineers, mechanical engineer. Paul Bryant, you talk about trade schools, tech schools. being needed in some of these predominantly black areas. What's your take on this new blue collar movement for wind energy?
I like it. I absolutely like it. You know, I've been saying for years, nuclear power is not viable.
Hmm.
I know it does not make emissions, but it's horrible. It's not viable. Nuclear waste lasts for what, 5,000 years, 10,000 years. But point is, uh, renewable energies, different sources of energies, wind, solar, broadcast energy transmission, fusion containment, hydrogen energy. This is the future. This is where we need to be looking. We need to be investing. And you know, personally, I'm of the belief that more more black youth should be looking into it. This is the future. You have to look toward the future. You can't keep looking completely toward the past while ignoring what's ahead.
I know.
Yeah, some good jobs. People are going to need jobs, and this is it. Trade is a skill. I'm pretty sure that you can transfer this skill to other technologies after this infrastructure is built out. You know, it's there, man. It's the jobs are there. The jobs are there, and this is one big, and this is just one thing. Wow. Uh, hey, I like it. I like it.
Personally, you know, I'm just going to chime in on something that Mike says. The jobs are there, yes, 100%, but so are the opportunities. I really see a tremendous upside potential for opportunities from a technical aspect that black youth who are technically inclined or mathematically inclined, even, or engineering inclined, need to look into this. Energy is the future, along with space technology. That's the future.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring this up because EDX actually has a program for a micro degree in energy principles and renewable energy. Things you'll learn, the language of energy, the challenges involved in providing sustainable energy supply, key scientific principles that underpin energy systems, the basics of a number of available renewable energy options, the role of energy storage. Energy literacy is a part of the syllabus. I just opened up the syllabus. The challenge, energy systems, bioenergy, geothermal, solar, wind power, hydropower, ocean power, energy storage, electricity management. And the length of the program is 12 weeks. You got to spend at least 10 to 12 hours per week. It's free. If you want the certificate, you got to pay $99. That's less than a pair of Jordans. Prerequisites: ability to perform simple mathematic operations, advanced English language skills. So you got to use, big words and stuff. What more can I say? And it's self-paced. It starts on May 6, 2019. You got a couple months to get this, to get it together. Energy principles and renewable energy from accredited University of Australia. An introduction to the language of energy. Key scientific principles that underpin energy systems, future energy challenges, and available renewable energy options. You heard it here first. For less than a pair of Jordans, for less than an iPhone,
A
you can't
whole
get.
a whole lot less than a bundle of hay weave.
Hmm. Hmm. And you can get a full actually not a full scholarship. I don't want to say a scholarship, but it's free. You can't beat the price. I just like the article just said. This is where in the next few years, this is where the jobs are going to be. You want to be able to get ahead of the curve by acquiring this sort of education so that you can apply it to the roles later on down the road in the next 2 or 3 years. I think what happens with a lot of black people is that they look at the market for right here and now and saying, well, is it going to get me a job right now? No, the opportunities is going to come in the next year and a half. We're talking 2020, 2022. You want to have your LinkedIn nice and beefy with a nice accredited education from a that's free and you didn't have to pay for it, and you're getting the literacy and the skill set out of it as well. And the article just pointed out that starting jobs is bare minimum $40,000. I wish I was 21, 22 again, boy, because I'd be tearing up this whole entire industry.
100%. And the thing with that is, even if you you get one of these jobs, all right,
Hmm.
you learn, you get the knowledge and expertise and the experience. Then you leverage that later on. All right. You leverage that to go into startups, okay, or to start your own business or to get business partners, start your own business, or as a group, a little small group. The group, the four or five or six of you move someplace else where you can build up contacts and from there dovetail out into your own business. Or there could be other opportunities where you have overseas, right? You don't know, but you have to get the knowledge and expertise so you can leverage it later on to your advantage. So it's more than just, you know, I really try to get black people to elevate their thinking.
Hmm.
It's more than just 30, 35 years, a pension, a stopwatch, a nice retirement. Those days are fast becoming the past. Okay, more and more of the Fortune 500 companies are doing away with pensions and savings plans. All right, so it's all about opportunities. Opportunities.
Hmm. All right, next one is from greentechmedia.com. Artificial intelligence helps tackle blade erosion for wind turbines. Smart systems have come up with two possible solutions to the problem. VTT Technical Research Center of Finland is looking for industry partners to test two anti-blade erosion coatings for wind turbines that were developed using artificial intelligence. The research the research body said blade erosion, which happens when rain, hail, dust, and other particles eat away at the leading edge of the turbine blades, is costing the wind industry a sum equal to between 2% and 4% of the value of all wind generated power production. A 2014 study found that blade erosion could significantly impair the performance of wind turbines within as little as 5 years following installation, and could lead to the need for on the ground repairs costing at least $75,000 per set of blades. Quote, it's a problem that costs billions and brings additional costs to all wind energy, said VTT principal scientist Ansi Luke. I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name. The problem is expected to worsen with increasing turbine sizes and the development of offshore wind farms, he said. On bigger turbines, the blade tips hit speeds that can top 100 meters per second, 225 miles per hour. Wow. It's It's fairly interesting, utilizing artificial intelligence, utilizing blockchain, crypto tokens. You have any opinions about this, Lionel?
As we read articles and we tell people, whoever listen to this is the future. These are the technologies that are going to come into are going to come into place in the future. It's called the fourth industrial revolution. It's fine that we say that, okay, but then we read articles that show how we break down the articles and we tell people how they're going to be used, how you can get into them. Tech, uh, I'm about to say something else. Artificial intelligence is helping with the erosion of blades in wind turbines.
Hmm.
That's powerful. Now that means these wind turbines don't have to be replaced as often. Money can be saved. And if you as a person can help do that, implement that, you have an opportunity there. That's a serious skill. And artificial intelligence is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's just going to get better and better and better. And you getting in on it now and continuing continued education throughout the years to stay abreast on the advances of artificial intelligence, you can be working well into your 70s. At that time, you could be considered an artificial intelligence master because you'd be in the field for half a century.
Hmm.
This is, oh man.
It requires someone to elevate their thinking. Okay, I you know what? I'm tired of decades of hearing, well, I'm just playing the cards that I was dealt. That's setting an extremely low bar. You have to elevate your thinking. Look higher, strive higher. You will achieve higher.
Hmm. I was listening to a hangout today, and I won't mention which one, but there were people defending, um, you know, drug dealing. That if my kids got to eat, then it doesn't matter if I sell drugs or not. And I'm scratching my head and I'm saying, how is it that you can spend time having this sort of discussion? It's just it's mind boggling when I hear certain things come out of people's mouths on YouTube these days. So
It's That's nothing new though, bro. That's why I said what I just said. The bar has been set so low that it's comfortable to set such a low bar. Okay? So before you even get out the gate, you already have it established in your mind. You are second class. You are less than. You are lower than. You are therefore operating lower than. And all you will ever be and can be is lower than.
mhm.
So, you know what? It becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. Okay? So when a person like myself, who destroyed, totally destroyed that entire mindset and model, when I point out that BS, get attacked and called all kind of names, which we won't even go into. So I'll let you get to your next article.
All right, all right. This one is from Composite Manufacturing Magazine.com. Experimental turbines to bring wind energy to the masses. Ken Visser, co-founder of Ducted Turbines International (DTI) and associate professor of mechanical and aeronautical engineering at Clarkson University, has a dream. He wants to produce the first commercially viable ducted wind turbine for U.S. homeowners, schools, businesses, and farms to generate their own electricity. If the CFRP blades on the most recent prototype perform as expected, he will be one step closer to his goal of making sustainable electricity globally accessible. Quote, my vision is My vision is that we could drop a box in the middle of some community that doesn't have any power, and they could assemble the wind turbine, get it up and running, and generate power, says Visser, who started DTI with Paul Pavone. Having the ability to make that kind of impact, that would be the greatest. DTI's wind turbine has a 3-meter diameter rotor comprising an aluminum hub and three CFRP composite blades with a surrounding 3.7-meter diameter GFRP duct. The ring-shaped duct, also called a shroud, increases airflow through the wind turbine blades. A Clarkson University alumni company, Empire Fiberglass Products Incorporated, manufactured the duct, and Vistec Composites fabricated the CFRP blade with funding, in fact, in part from a National Science Foundation grant. Interesting. Vistec and DTI worked together to combine the blades to reduce costs and maximize performance. The blades were hand laid using 12 to 16 layers of snap cure epoxy woven pre-preg with mostly 90-degree fiber orientation. The form uncured blades were then sandwiched between a temperature controlled rigid mold and a combination of Vistac's pressure focusing layer, PFL, in a rigid compression mode. The PFL is a soft, compliant layer with varied thickness and geometries across a composite as determined by Vistec's proprietary modeling and optimization process. Jason Kruppers, co-founder and chief technology officer of Vistex, says the process produces parts with material properties that are comparable to or better than autoclave parts, but with a significant cost reduction. This is very interesting because one, I never even heard of this site before, but two, the ability to have like a drop ship wind turbine kit for a neighborhood is actually something to really think about. It doesn't really say how much power it generates, but I assume that it must be more than enough.
One of the things that stands out to me, because the only way to make carbon fiber is with an autoclave, which is one of the limiting factors of it. No matter the the size of carbon fiber parts are limited to the size of the autoclave that you're going to bake them in. So this guy's saying that he's creating an ad, advanced carbon fiber that doesn't need an autoclave. How he's achieved that is amazing.
Hmm.
That's impressive. I mean, as of right now, the largest carbon fiber pieces made in the world are Boeing, that they make their the wings and the tails out of,
Hmm.
and they're made at specific factories that had autoclaves built inside the factory specifically for it. But Boeing has that kind of money. Not everyone has that kind of money. Carbon fiber is very expensive to make because it's handmade, and you have to bake it inside of an autoclave.
Hmm. Lionel, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, no comment on this one.
Yeah, it only weighs about 8 to 10 pounds. The latest
Yeah,
prototype was 2.4 pounds. That's actually
that's
that's
nothing.
very significant. Yeah, that's very significant in terms of weight savings.
And his idea, as he said, to just drop it in the middle of a town that's relatively isolated. They can put it together and have it up and running.
Something to think about. Very
Yes, it
much to think
is.
about.
And I already know what you're thinking and where you're going with that, Mike. I was about to say it, but I'll leave it alone.
Yeah, I'll keep the good, the good stuff offline.
Yeah.
You have to get the braid trust after dark or something like that. All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this next one is from Tesla Roddy. Tesla Powerwall Power Pack batteries help Nova Scotia weather power outages. Tesla residential Powerwall and commercial power.
Oh, you there, Mike? Mike?
I think he may have lost connection. Hey, Mike, you there?
Well, that's probably what happens when you have too many Pornhub windows open.
Repeat that one more time.
Just jokes, just jokes.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think he got lost.
Yeah,
Excuse me, connection there.
yes.
Hey, you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, we hear you now.
All right, the batteries are a key part of the ongoing. Where did I leave off? Oh, sorry about that. For the micro level, 10 Msdale homes that are part of a microgrid had Tesla Powerwall 2 units installed. At the macro level, the Tesla Power Packs were deployed at the Elmsdale substation, are storing energy generated by wind turbines located at Hardwood Lands, Nova Scotia. The commercial batteries are expected to be a good fit for the region's grid as 19% of Nova Scotia's electricity is already being produced from wind turbines. Nova Scotia Power Project Manager Jill, Cyril highlighted the potential of the initiative in a statement at Toro Daily. Quote, we wanted to see if we could use the batteries not just in consumer homes, but also to see if they could provide reliability with wind integration for a whole distribution circuit, she said. As an opportunity for Tesla batteries to prove their value emerged on January 1st, 2019, when the region was faced with a 5-hour power outage during the height of a snowstorm. Apart from seeing uninterrupted power, several homeowners with the Powerwall 2 also observed that their batteries still had over 85% by the time power came back on. Elmsdale residents Mac and Ann Noble, whose home was fitted with a Tesla Powerwall 2 battery, shared their experiences during power outages. When the power goes out, it's completely instantaneous. The desktop computer I have over there, it didn't even flicker when it went out. For the for the senior program manager, Tesla's batteries are showing signs that they can perform very well. This project, for us and for me personally, has been fantastic. We've had a lot of industry interest in this because a lot of jurisdictions are talking about storage as a utility asset, but not many are actually doing it. We're one of the few who are. We're leading. We are leading edge. Some of this work, which is really exciting. She said, "This is this is really interesting stuff."
Yeah, The article doesn't say whether they're lithium ion batteries or nickel metal hydride. Um, Nickel metal hydride is a lot heavier and it's bulkier, but it stores much more energy than lithium ion and lasts a lot longer.
or a
Lead,
polymer.
right, correct. And but lithium batteries are much smaller and much lighter compared to nickel metal hydride.
Hmm.
The difference is over time they lose their ability to hold charge. So after a while, it can hold more than 75% of a charge or 80% of its original um, charging capacity.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say what they're made of, and of course they make zero mention of. I say it again: graphene or hemp biomass batteries, because both are superconductive and supercapacitive at room temperature.
Yeah, they're only good for 1,000 cycles
Hmm. Which
before you start to
tells
see that degradation that you're talking about at 75% of a charge.
right, but as a concept, as a concept, this is an absolute game changer. I mean, this is something that we're talking you only see in sci-fi.
Hmm.
So just the thought of it, I like that. I like that they're completely thinking outside the box once again.
Hmm.
Of course, I personally would like to see them jump on graphene and biomass batteries, but I don't see that they will because that's not Elon Musk's business model. He's a straight businessman. He's not as much as of an innovator, but still, I like the idea. It's bold.
I know. Do you have anything you want to add to it?
No, some water went down the wrong pipe over here. Excuse me, my bad.
All right.
No, nothing to add.
All right. All right. This one is from MIT News. MIT Energy and this energy study reports on the future of nuclear energy. Findings suggest new policy models and cost-cutting technologies could help nuclear play vital role in climate solutions. How can the world achieve the deep carbon emissions reductions that are necessary to slow or reverse the impact of climate change? The authors of a new MIT study say that unless nuclear energy is meaningfully incorporated into the global mix of low carbon energy technologies, the challenge of climate change will be much more difficult and costly to solve. For nuclear energy to take its place as a major low carbon energy source, however, issues of cost and policy need to be addressed. In the future of nuclear energy in a carbon constrained world, released by the MIT Energy Initiative on September 3rd, the authors analyzed the reasons for current global stall of nuclear energy capacity, which currently accounts for only 5% of global primary energy production, and discuss measures that could be taken to arrest and reverse that trend. The study group, led by MIT researchers in collaboration with colleagues from Idaho National Laboratory and the University of Wisconsin at Madison, is presenting its findings and recommendations at events in London, Paris, and Brussels next this week, followed by events on September 25th in Washington and on October 9th in Tokyo. MIT graduate and undergraduate students and postdocs, as well as faculty from Harvard University and members of various think tanks, also contributed to the study as members of, of the research team. Quote, our analysis demonstrates that realizing nuclear energy's potential is essential to achieving a deeply decarbonized energy future in many regions of the world. Says study co-chair Jacopo. I'm going to pronounce their last name.
Buongiorno.
Yeah, Buongiorno. Thank you. The study team notes that the electricity sector, in particular, is a prime candidate for deep decarbonization. Global electricity consumption is on track to grow 45% by 2040. And the team's analysis shows that the exclusion of nuclear from low carbon scenarios could cause the average cost of electricity to escalate dramatically. Quote, understanding the opportunities and challenges facing the nuclear energy industry requires a comprehensive analysis of technical, commercial, and policy dimensions, says Robert Armstrong, director of MIT Energy Initiative and Chevron professor of chemical engineering. Over the past 2 years, this team has examined each issue, and the resultant report contains guidance policymakers, industry leaders may find valuable as they evaluate options for the future. Now, Paul, you've talked about this earlier in the hangout that nuclear is not sustainable, but MIT says otherwise.
I disagree 1000%. I totally, absolutely, positively disagree 1000%. Nuclear, excuse me, nuclear does not produce emissions. It does produce nuclear waste, and you have to put it somewhere. And wherever you put it, you can't go near it for at least 1,000 years. If you start putting nuclear power plants all over the place, the amount of waste produced is going to exponentially go up. Where are you going to put it that you can't go near it for 1,000 years? I guess the world needs another Chernobyl to remind everyone how much nuclear power is not viable. I guess everyone has forgotten how in January of 2017, fish were caught off the coast of Washington State, and which is where the city of Seattle is, that had radioactive iodine from the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan that had its accident way back in 2011. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Europe led the world in nuclear power plants. Quiet as kept, Europe has spent the last 12 years shutting down their nuclear power plants. It's not viable. You know, you can have. There will always be 1,000 scientists telling you that cell phones are safe, but yet people are getting tumors in their heads. There will be 1,000 scientists, including the eggheads at MIT, who are saying that nuclear power is the future, but it's not viable because it produces nuclear waste that has to be put somewhere. And God forbid there's accidents or there's leaks. And unfortunately, these accidents and leaks happen far too often.
I know you have anything you want to add to nuclear energy?
Yeah, I've heard people, excuse me, I've heard people say the same things Paul Bryan has just said. That was that was actually Paul Bryan's points are actually a lot of the points people say when they mention the reasons we need to convert to renewable energies. I don't know, and these are other scientists are saying this also. I don't know why MIT is saying this. I don't know if it's if they were. uh, I don't know, but I've heard other scientists say the exact same things Paul Bryan just said. So my question is, I don't know why MIT is saying um, there's nothing wrong with nuclear energy.
Well, I guess in order to get continuous energy in certain areas where there is no hydroelectric and there is no no more coal-fired plants. I guess the quickest way to get that energy would be from a nuclear power plant, a micro nuclear power plant, because I think that's what they were referring to is these new micro or mini nuclear power plants that they're talking about. Things about the size of a football stadium, not that big. Um, I don't know. I'm not very skilled in this area to really understand um, what their what the sacrifices are with these newly developed nuclear power plants. I know Russia a couple of years ago developed a floating nuclear power plant on a barge, which is actually very interesting that they can tow this nuclear power plant to various locations where they need it, where they need sustainable power.
Yeah, but a nuclear reactor, whether it's in a submarine, an aircraft carrier, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Indian Point, right here in upstate New York, they're all the same. You have a you have a pressure vessel that has water inside of it with nuclear fuel rods and nuclear and inert control rods surrounded by water outside the pressure vessel with pipes and heat exchangers that collect the steam from the boiling water that turn turbines. Regardless of the size, that is a nuclear reactor. At some point, the control rods absorb all the radiation from the fuel rods, but the fuel rods are still hot. They're still somewhat radioactive. The control rods are very radioactive. They just don't throw off the radiation that generated the heat and all the power. Both of those have to be stored somewhere. The water that's inside the pressure vessel to act as a secondary buffer and control the actual reaction, that's radioactive. It's a set amount because it's sealed inside the pressure vessel, but it's just as radioactive as the spent fuel rods and the inert but now hot con- control rods. That's all nuclear waste, and it all has to be stored somewhere. It has to be put in lead lined, reinforced concrete cylinders and buried, and then set inside another vessel, which is also lead lined, surrounded by reinforced concrete, and you can't go near it for 1,000 years. So whether you can tow this reactor to where you need it, hook up lines, and then tow it someplace else, at some point, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you have spent rods and control rods and water inside the pressure vessel, and it has to go somewhere.
Hmm.
And no scientist can dispute that because that is how nuclear power operates.
Hmm.
That's how well, no, I'm sorry, atomic power operates differently, but I digress. Nuclear waste, where do you store it? It's not viable. We don't get the emissions. It produces zero emissions because it's literally sealed within the pressure chamber. But the radioactive waste is 1,000 times worse than the emissions. And God forbid the emissions do get out, as they did in Chernobyl. Now what? I just don't see how it's viable in any way.
Hmm. All right, this last one is from NationalGeographic.com. As the world cuts back on coal, a growing appetite in Africa. Few places in the world is, exude a sense of timelessness as Lamu, an island off of Kenya's northern coast, home to the oldest and best preserved Swahili settlement in East Africa. Lamu's Old Town, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and epicenter of Indian Ocean trade for centuries, is a maze of narrow, winding streets that cut through neighborhoods of limestone and coral houses, past elaborately carved mahogany doors and several dozen mosques and churches. Only a handful of motor vehicles are allowed on the island. Transportation is mainly the domain of donkeys and men pushing wooden carts through the tropical swelter. Yet, Lamu Island 24,000 residents are faced with what many here are call an existential crisis. Some 15 miles north of town, on a sparsely populated seaside area of the mainland, formerly used for growing maize, cashews, and sesame, a Kenyan company known as Amu Power is preparing to erect a $2 billion coal power plant, the first of its kind in East Africa. Financed with Chinese, South African, and Kenyan capital, and built by the state owned Power Construction Corporation of China, the plant is intended to add 1,050 megawatts of capacity to Kenya's national grid and power operations of an adjacent 32 berth deep water port. Both are part of an ambitious government plan to transform Kenya into a newly industrializing middle income country by 2030. Big ambitions. The project is controversial in part due to the risk it poses to Lamu's delicate marine environment, which many fear will harm its two most vital industries, fishing and tourism. Yet it also emblematic of Africa's growing appetite for coal, the most polluting form of power generation, which until now has existed in significant quantities only in the continent's most industrialized country, South Africa. According to data compiled by Coal Swarm, an industry watchdog, more than 100 coal generating units with a combined capacity of 42.5 gigawatts are in various stages of planning or development in 11 African countries outside of South Africa, more than 8 times the region's existing coal capacity. Nearly all are fueled by foreign investment, and roughly half are being financed by the world's largest coal emitter, China. This comes at a time when China and India, which accounted for 86% of the global and coal development over the last decade, are putting coal projects on hold at record rates due to existing overcapacity. The lowering cost of renewables and crippling pollution that is start to kill more than 1 million people a year in the case of China alone. Many of the world's more developed countries are also in the process of phasing out the fuel as a power source. Quote, so many states are now withdrawing coal because of its emissions, because of its environmental destruction, says Wali Ahmed, a member of Save Lamu. A local coalition is trying to stop Amu's power project. Africa's embrace of coal is in part the result of its acute shortage of power. Although the continent's economy has doubled in size since 2000, more than two-thirds of the residents in south of the Sahara still live without electricity, and most states lack the grid capacity to drive the expansion of job-creating industries. The International Energy Agency projects the region's electricity demand to triple by 2040, with roughly half of new capacity coming from renewables. Yet, coal-fired plants, which generate 41% of the world's electricity today, remain attractive because coal is relatively cheap and operation isn't and their operation isn't subject to the whims of nature, unlike solar and wind and hydro. In Kenya, for example, the country's 800 megawatts of hydropower, 1/3 of its total capacity, has become increasingly unreliable due to recurrent drought and is virtually inoperable at present, according to Richard Mariu, an advisor to Kenya's Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. Although the country has extensive wind and geothermal resources, which it has started to exploit, these projects aren't coming online fast enough. Mariu, Mariu says to keep up with Kenya's project demand. Coal will give us some time, some breathing space. He says we will see it as a shot in the arm as we continue to develop our renewables. For those financing Africa's embrace of coal, the continent also offers an opportunity to counterbalance diminishing investment opportunities elsewhere. This is particularly true of China, which saw 300 gigawatts of domestic coal projects put on hold in 2016, largely due to existing overcapacity. China's state owned enterprises, abetted by low cost loans from domestic financial institutions, have played a major role in building Africa's renewable and fossil fuel energy infrastructure since the Communist Party unveiled its going abroad strategy in the early 2000s. Paul Bryant, what's your take on coal power being used in Africa, out of all places?
I am, believe it or not, against it because coal power is dirty. It is very dirty. So just because it's Africa does not mean that I somehow giving it a pass
Hmm.
at all. Not at all. December, I believe it was, Germany closed its last coal-fired power plant. Now, to be specific, it's their last black coal-fired power plant. They still have several what's called gray coal, which is a different form of coal. They do have a few of those, but they are closing those. And so, as of right now, at the government level, the state level, Germany said that they're making a push to move the country completely away from fossil fuel power generation and into alternative sources of energy. I make mention of that because that is the future, right? We have to get away from nuclear power and we have to get away from the coal burners because nothing pollutes this planet like a coal-fired energy plant. So I am highly, highly against coal burners. They're very dirty. They pollute the planet. So, along with the investment in infrastructure and intellectual capital in Africa, it would be also really nice to see an investment in alternative energy there.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this earlier in the hangout, but before you guys got on, that there has to be. I mean, if you're gonna have a coal-fired power plant, okay, fine. Infrastructure goes up. Now, what are you gonna do with all that smog in Africa with all these protected animals and wildlife and whatnot that's there, right? At some point, those animals will have to inhale that smog that comes out of it. Like you said earlier, it's dirty power for the most part. There has to be a way to capture the smog and recycle it back and kind of clean it before it re enters the atmosphere, right? In the same way you do like clean diesel fuel on a car, you put the blue fluid into the exhaust system, and then it becomes clean diesel, like on Volkswagens and Audis and things of that nature. So there has to be a way to actually clean the fuel in that same regard, or clean the exhaust in the same regard when it comes to coal fire. No.
Uh, it's been looked into, but nothing of any consequence has ever come from it. Now, I don't know if that's so much because of the science isn't there and how much of it is the oil and gas company has suppressed that as well. Right? I can't speak to that well enough to say that it is or it isn't. I one or the other. Um, I like to think that that technology is out there, or at least it's possible. But to be honest, I don't know. I just don't know. What I do know is that nothing on this earth pollutes the earth more than coal-fired power plants, with the exception of chemical plants. The stuff, the waste they produce is downright nasty. But You know, I I'm of the mind. I would really like to just get away from the coal burners.
Hmm.
You know, again, if 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 the goal is to have Africa be a tech leader, um, there are pockets there, yes, but not. There are pockets there, yes. There are ahead of what we're doing here in America as far as black people, yes. But the country is not an actual. I don't feel comfortable myself calling it a leader yet.
Hmm.
But if it can get to that status, then I see it as an amazing test bed for alternative sources of energy. You have the land. You have the land. You don't have the infrastructure. The investment is the infrastructure. But there's so much undeveloped land. You can literally build small cities, to house 5,000, 10,000 people, literally as a test bed and just build it. Roads, underground, high rises, everything, and just test alternative sources of energy. Use it as a test bed. You have the intellectual technology there. It's covered here in this space. How many tech startups there are there that you never see in mainstream media?
Hmm.
Okay, so you have the intellectual capital. Leverage it. Use it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this works out for them. I mean, they have to figure out a way to tie in renewables with the coal fired plants. I mean, I
Mm,
understand that the coal fire is actually the cheapest way for them to go
right.
as it stands right now, especially if somebody else is paying for it. Um, but when it comes to the long term aspect, a coal fired plant might be online for maybe 30 years at best before it needs to be shut down, because it's no longer it's not going to be viable. So if you built it now, it's going to be online until what 2050 at best. So it's best to do like the Canadians are doing right now with their integration of these Tesla power packs and these power walls in people's homes, and wind power connected to wind power, as well as even solar panels, um, and hydro. There's got to be a way to develop underwater turbines in the ocean that's going to create these mini hydroelectric plants.
Well, you know what? The cost is high, so I'm not going to say it's prohibitive, but the cost is high. So unless you have people lobbying for it, which you don't have that in Africa, well, you know what? Screw them. They're Africans. Let them breed the soot until we figure something else out. It's cheap.
Well,
It's expedient.
it's probably cheaper to give everybody a cheap tissue mask,
Right.
like they do in China.
Exactly. Exactly. That was that's my point. That's the prevailing mindset. Let them breathe and fumes. Until we figure something else out.
That's uh that's a nice exchange you all here. I actually learned a lot just listening from you all because my thought was I didn't know that. I should have known, but I didn't know that there were areas in Africa that were still doing this because of the abundance of minerals. But yeah, I was just gonna say I sit on the sideline listening to YouTube talk. I actually learned.
All right. Well, any closing thoughts there, Lionel?
No closing thoughts from me.
All right. My closing thoughts is basically renewable energies is where everything's going right now. I mean, going forward in the future. And I dropped a link for EDX with the actual program that's free for a degree, not a degree, but a certificate in renewable energy development. they're going to teach you all of the renewable platforms that are going to be offered in the next couple of years, and that's going to be a lucrative market. We covered an article that the discussed the entry level position or entry level pay is actually going to be 40 plus $1,000. This is middle class entry level opportunity that's going to get you into the middle class, and the education that you need is actually free. You can get it online right now for less than a pair of Jordans. So what I what I want people to take away from this is that we talked about coal power because coal power is important in from a legacy standpoint, but from a future standpoint, renewable energy is where it's going to be going. So you got to understand um, the two to get an idea as to where we came from into where we're going. Paul Brown, you have any last words?
Yeah, renewable energy is the future. Okay, the oil and gas industry has been suppressing alternative sources of energy since the 60s and the early 70s. So things now seem to be at a point where they either don't have the ability to suppress it like they once did, or things have just gotten to a point where it's like, okay, fine, this stuff has just got to come out now. So it's the future, okay? And one has, you have to have the ability to adapt, okay? Either adapt or get completely left behind. All right, there are so many opportunities here from employment to business to wealth creation to um, innovation and invention and creation. It is limitless. There is limitless upside potential. Understand, this is the future. This is where the world is going. This is not sci-fi. It's here. We're seeing it on a daily basis. All right, so you have to embrace it, and either you can be at the leading edge of the curve, or you can be at the tail, just following all along. So, you know, my my mantra for years: elevate your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll be back on Monday with Space and Technology. You all, you all have a good weekend.